Welcome to episode 18 of the Wheels and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Ben Durham, and today we have Patty Wiens joining us as our guest. This time we're doing this on Riverside, so you are over in Winnipeg, and you are the bicycle mayor of Winnipeg.
That's me.
Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am 51 years old, going to be 52 on March 10. If anyone is interested in doing some kind of a ride along for my birthday, I always try to do something like that. I love my birthday. And I have been a bicycle commuter for a few years, but I have been a winter cyclist this is my third winter. And I think that we can all agree that once you identify yourself as a winter cyclist, it's hard to identify yourself as anything else because it's a very proud thing to be able to say, I cycle year round and I live in Winnipeg. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And so you mentioned that frost biking or winter biking, what do you like to call it? Frost biking or winter biking?
Oh, frost biking is kind of fun. Well, I try to say year-round cycling so that I'm not one of those, snobs who says I ride my bike in winter. But I am a snob. I ride my bike in winter. And I just say winter cycling.
That is fair. And I guess the reason I'm asking about that from the very top is I agree that year-round or frost biking, it's important. And you said before you were a fair weather cyclist. And then the big aha moment was when you started biking in the winter. Did you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Because I have my own
absolutely.
thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that number one is when you're riding your bike in mild weather or, even if you ride every day, including in the rain, you have a route that you can take, you can sort of make it a long route, a scenic route, and you don't care because you're on your bike. But the minute you start riding your bike in winter, you have to make some choices. I'm going to go take the shorter way so that I'm not outside in minus 25 Celsius very long. I'm going to try to find the straight line to work or to commute. And then you realize that, that's not as friendly. And now you have to battle. Did the city really plow this route? Are the drivers going to respect me? Am I okay to take this route or am I going to have to take the bus? Are my paths cleared today? Did I get too much wind? Everything starts to play. And then you become a radical because now you're calling the city going, hey, why didn't my path get plowed last night? Oh, we don't plow that. And you're like, why not? I am a citizen. I pay my taxes. I'd like to be able to get to work.
Yeah, and it's we're finding this year. We just had a snowfall. We've had a few this year. Probably not as much as Winnipeg.
Probably not.
Because we're in southwestern Ontario. So it is less of an issue here, but that means from a London and Toronto perspective, which have fairly large populations, it's like, hey, why isn't this infrastructure, if there's Patty over in Winnipeg and she's asking, hey, I want infrastructure and I bike, and there are other people that bike during the winter and it's more extreme than in Toronto and southwestern Ontario, etc., then how here in southwestern Ontario do we not have that infrastructure? If only for a few days of the year, it's uncomfortable or maybe slightly more difficult to bike, or sometimes because of the lack of plowing, etc., almost impossible to actually do it without being in danger of falling or just in danger of being in the road because you have to be, because that's the only place where it's plowed, or at least some of the heat from the tires of vehicles have dissipated the snow because of the lack of plowing. So
and it's there was days where before I got my e-bike, I would carry my bike for a 1 kilometer through this field that goes along the airfield. And I would have to carry my bike because it didn't get plowed. And some of the snowdrifts were ridiculous. It was up to my mid calf. And I'm thinking, drivers don't have to worry about this stuff. The cars melt the worst of the snow. The city takes care of the rest. Why am I having to make this choice? And not only active transportation paths, but also sidewalks. Let's not even get there, right? It's anyone outside of a car seems to get forgotten during the winter months. And so I think that that's what really pushed me towards advocacy.
I would happen to agree, especially with those sidewalks there. So we have two grocery stores, a No Frills and a Food Basics near us. We're trying to do more Food Basics for one reason or another. That's a whole other topic. And to get to that is a little bit further. And there is not adequate bike infrastructure. And weirdly enough, it's a main road that is not getting more cycling infrastructure, even though recently it's going to be a BRT, so bus rapid transit corridor. And it's weird. We've talked with the city and everything. They're like, yeah, there's just not enough room. It is massive. I don't know how there's not enough room. But this was back in 2017 when they did the surveying and all of that. And either way, sidewalk 2 days ago, just needed some groceries. We're cooking and I needed to top up a few things. And it was difficult. And I'm thinking I will ask you about e-bikes in just a moment, because they have changed the game for winter biking, and I think they have for you too. But at least for me, I have comments on it. But anyway, right back to the sidewalk real quick. It wasn't fully plowed. It had snert, if you're familiar.
We are.
Oh my goodness. The snert's way worse than anything else. Like
way worse.
Yeah, you can prepare for ice.
And with climate change, it is more prevalent than the nice, cold snowfall. We're getting minus 25 today. And by Wednesday, it's going to be +1. Well, guess what's going to happen, right? Yeah. Snert. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
think that one of the issues,
it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. And now, the cycling advocacy is getting louder and louder. We're getting more organized. We are contacting the city. We're making ourselves present. And then we're getting, results. Our active transportation bicycle paths are getting plowed. But the pedestrians don't have an advocacy group. The sidewalks are not getting cleared. And so now it's pitting us against each other, where the pedestrians are going, how come the bike lane is getting cleared, right? And then they take the bike lane, and then we're going to have to share the bike lane with the pedestrians. And then they get upset because we pass them fast. It kind of becomes this cycle of what do we need to do? Do we all have to show up at City Hall and say, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's like, hey, there are all of these different ways of getting around. They all need to be, like, from an accessibility standpoint, like, they need to be purposefully plowed and maintained. So I just want to ask, with those bike lanes and how they're being plowed, are they plowing really well, or is there still snert on top?
So I would say that when they get plowed, they get scraped really well, which is not always ideal. The ideal would be, like they do in Finland, to leave, I think it's less than 2 centimeters is what they leave in Finland, because it creates that very light traction. It's like a track. They plow it differently so that you have a little bit of traction, right? But with climate change, we're needing to get it scraped. Otherwise, it becomes this freeze and thaw cycle, which creates a lot of icy conditions. So it is tricky. And it's not consistent right now, but the problem that we're having is that, budget, money, and our city is too widespread. So what happens is they start in the downtown area, which makes sense. It has a lot more bike commuters. But by the time they get to me, I live kind of far from downtown, I've already got to work. I've already battled everything. I've already pushed my bike for 1 kilometer. And then on the way home, hopefully it didn't snow more and I can get home. But there's times where I have to make a choice. Like, I know it's going to get plowed, but I'm not going to make it through. So I'm going to have to take the bus and be really upset because it takes me longer to get to work by bus than to ride my bike.
And before we get into, I really want to cover in this episode, the women in active transportation, because it is a passion of yours. I wanted to cover the e-bike and how it can help. Less so with snert, because I still have a fairly difficult time with snert, even with an e-bike. But when you are dealing with that, where if you are on more of the outskirts or further away from downtown and they plow the downtown first, which I agree, it makes sense. You have a lot more density, a lot more people doing the active transportation thing. But not saying that it's not impossible, because we also have the same situation where we are about a 20-minute acoustic bike ride to downtown or a 15-minute e-bike ride, depending on how much we are pedaling.
Giving her, yeah.
Giving her. And so similar situation. Like, the reason I brought up that sidewalk is that was the final sidewalk. The snert is what the plow left behind. I'm like, guys, you didn't plow. And I'm thinking from a pedestrian standpoint, because again, I was using the sidewalk on this road because the side roads were not plowed, and those are usually what I would use because there's no bike infrastructure there. In this case, there is some infrastructure, just not along this route. And yeah, the pedestrian route just was all snert, and that is hard to walk in too. So with the e-bike though, do you find that it is easier? I have one sentence that I'll just say real quick. Like, temperature regulation is how e-bikes help me. Like, that's what I would call it.
So the first e-bike I got was a rad power bike, because I just wanted to know, is this going to make a difference before I invest in something a little bit better, right? So I had a rad power bike with a rear hub motor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the differences between all the different bikes. And I found that, what's that?
Oh, I was just going to say that for the audience, there's mid-drive, which are quite nice, but they tend to be a bit more expensive. But there's a lot of good reasons to have those. Then there's rear hub drive, and then there's direct hub drive, which are really heavy and powerful and power hungry, but less good because then your bike is really heavy. Sorry, go on. Those are the different types.
So the first one I had was a rear hub with a cadence motor. So the moment that you hit or a cadence sensor, so the moment you hit the pedals, it went for you. And temperature regulation was perfect, because I started off warm and I stayed that temperature the whole time. And because of the words escape me. I'm still in Brazilian mode.
There's either torque sensor or cadence sensor.
No, so this one was a cadence sensor, but the oh my god, I can't remember the word.
There's chains and pedals and sensors throttle.
Yes, thank you.
There we go, throttle. Yeah. Typically, mid-drives have less throttle. And
yeah. So this one had a throttle, and I was able to kind of push through the snow a little bit and kind of try to keep my balance. I didn't. It was a fat tire, right? So I didn't have the studs because that's very expensive and inexistent for this one particular bike. And I found that it was like, oh, this is great. And the major thing about the e-bike was that, I don't know how the wind is there, but here in the winter, we can get 50-kilometer winds. 50 kilometers against you is insane. So a ride that used to take me an hour and a half on my acoustic bike was now taking 50 minutes, right? So that was much better. It made a huge difference that way, temperature control, and not having to guess, am I going to go because of the wind or not, right? When I switched to a mid-drive, because once I realized that I didn't need my car anymore, I sold my car, and then I invested in a better e-bike. I have a Tough Hill e-bike. Tough Hill is from Calgary. And it's a small family-owned business, awesome people, great service. And we got to meet the owner actually when we went through Calgary. So that's what he took us on a ride, and I got really hooked on the bike because it's a Dutch feel to it. It's a more upright bike, and it has a mid-drive. It had all the things that I wanted, and it is a beautiful ride. I named her after my favorite person. Her name is Taylor Swift. I don't know if you've heard of her. But it's a wonderful ride, and I got studded tires for it. But one thing that I didn't realize was that having the mid-drive was going to make me work a little bit harder. So this is a good thing because I'm also going through perimenopause. So my body temperature is all like crazy. And I was able to now endure the cold a little bit more. I start a little bit more cold, which I hate admitting because I don't like being cold ever. But now I'm able to sort of get a little bit more control on the bike instead of having that, that cadence sensor that just kicks you and you're not really working. The mid drive has a torque sensor and I'm able to it feels more real, right?
Definitely.
So,
yep.
but again, I still don't have to choose whether I am going to ride today or not because of the wind, because I just kick up the assist a little bit. And with this particular bike, the Tough Hill, I'm able to, the battery lasts so long, even in the cold weather, and I'm able to park it inside so I don't have to worry about the bike being outside in the cold all day. But the e-bike is a game changer. I mean, I know there is a lot of talk about e-bikes, regulation, and they shouldn't be on bike lanes. And there's a lot of hate going around, but it's a distraction from the real problem, which is cars, right?
I agree. And I wanted to kind of break in real quick. So I have Tough Hill up on my screen here. It looks really good. It's similar to a lot of the really good bikes. It has the mid drive, has nice racks. Do you happen to have a front rack too, or no? Not on yours? Or
yeah, I have.
okay.
I have a basket in the front. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm just looking at the demo image. I'm like, yeah. Do you have a CVT as a transmission as well, or is it chainring?
CVT.
So how is it a fancy way to switch, for gearing?
Yeah, it's belt. It's a belt drive.
Okay, so belt drive, and I think.
Yeah.
So you have an internal gear, or?
Yeah, internal gear hub. Yeah.
So we might, in the coming months, have something like that. Right now, all I can associate with is the mid-drive versus hub. So we have some hub motors, and then we have a turn cargo bike, the GSD, and that is mid-drive. And I know exactly what you're talking about, hey, wow, I'm getting more of a workout, because there's a little bit more cheating when it comes to the rear hub drive, because it's cadence. And I didn't realize it. I mean, I still had a bunch of temperature regulation going on where I would get really warm in the winter and I'd have to turn up the assist. So there's still a lot more exercise, and occasionally I'm like, oh yeah, my heart rate's pretty high, even though I'm on an e-bike. But sometimes I'm like, is it taking too much away? And then I think, well, I would be driving, so absolutely not. No matter how much I cheat on this, which I'm not, I'm still pedaling the entire way, but I kind of like mid-drives for that. I hope, they make you pedal. You have to. So even if you're on the top assist, you still have to.
You still have to pedal. And when I think about it this way, when I had an acoustic bike, I used to put about 1,500 to maybe 2,000 kilometers on my bike, and now I'm at 9,000, right? Because I sold my car. And we still have a car in the house, but the car is never my default. Mm-hmm. Never. It's always the bike first, year round. The car is if it's I'm really tired. I've already ridden my bike today. I just don't want to be outside in the cold.
So I might have a video coming out at some point. We are also a car light. We call it car light, LITE, household, because the exception is exactly what you said. It's, okay, do we have a bunch of errands? Are we going to jam the car full? It's a nice little hatchback, a Elantra GT, and we like it. We got it specifically because it's what we can't do with a bike. But Natalia, my wife, is out today, and we drove yesterday for the first time in a week and a half because we needed to get the car. We are trying to make sure the battery doesn't die, because that happened last month.
And the brakes too.
Yes.
We have to,
we have to do it at least once or twice per week. Last week we were really bad because we could bike, so we did. It's really hard. We could never at this point get a second car, because it would literally just disintegrate in the driveway. It would be the most useless purchase of our lives, because the one car is barely used. We're still waiting for a time when we both need the car, and we couldn't just take a bus or bike or something. So anyways, just that. So, okay, that's e-bikes. I could talk endlessly about this because it sounds like we have very similar lifestyles going on. Yep.
Yeah, I think that we need to stop talking about e-bikes as cheating. It's over. It's an old moot point. I know so many people who have either gone car light or gotten rid of their cars, because the e-bike makes it so easy to make that choice, so much less expensive. And I always say to people, do it for the money first. That's fine. Do it for the money. Let's pretend that it's about the money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're gonna start noticing that maybe you can go a little bit later into the fall, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I won't need my parking spot for winter. There's $200 a month that I'm saving. And you get through winter and you go, wait, I'm not depressed about winter this year. And then you're like, oh. And once you realize that that's the big change, you can't go back. You can't go back. It doesn't exist. When I don't ride my bike for 3 days, I'm a bear. Impossible.
Around the holidays, we drove over to a few different places for families, and it was fairly snowy, and we did not bring our bikes. And we stayed inside and hung out with family members. It was really nice. But when we got back, we hadn't ridden our bikes for like 2 weeks. We got on and we both just were laughing. It was like just hysterical. Like while biking, we're like, ha, this is amazing. Like we were just having a riot. And any onlookers probably were like, what are they doing? Like they're just laughing maniacally. Like,
well, it's that feeling of being a child, right? Like sometimes the critique that I get, grow up and get a bike. Why? Or get a car. Grow up and get a car. Why? Do you like growing up? Or is there something from your childhood that you want to hang on to? This is the easiest way to do it. For me, it's the same, especially in the winter. If I can't take the bike for whatever reason, let's face it, if you want to be a real winter cyclist, you got to be okay with saying not today. Today I will have to take the bus. Today I'll have to get a ride. I might have to drive, right? That is the sustainable way of becoming a winter cyclist. But if I can't for a few days and I get on my bike, by the time I get to the corner, I am laughing all by myself, going, oh, this is what I miss.
Do you find that it's like almost, I was going to say conquering nature, but it isn't. It's actually just being one with nature. You're like, hey, I have the proper amount of layers on, and okay, I have to ask you about this. We're still on winter biking because it's winter here in Canada, so there's that. But and you're in Winnipeg, which is about 20 degrees less than here, because you said it's like negative 25. It's, I think, just 5 degrees now during the daytime. So it's really, I would say, mild.
Not winter, yeah.
So bikeable. So bikeable. But you find that while you were saying like going progressively more and more later into the fall, and then suddenly it's winter and then it's spring. Well, it's like, oh, huh. But if you are more frequently biking, then what I find is that as let's say your hands get a little bit cold, and then it's only, I don't know, like -5, and you have time to adjust and maybe get the handlebar mitts or different things, or your toes are cold, so you have time over the season to adjust, and maybe next season you'll like bike a bit more because you're like, well, last season I didn't wear rain pants or snow pants, or I didn't like how that made me feel, and like you adjust as you go. And it's kind of like if you were to stop biking at, I don't know, in October, and then you started in February, there would be a massive shock, and you almost wouldn't be prepared because it's such a drastic difference. But if you just keep on going.
I thought so too, and I still think that. In fact, I was terrified coming home from Brazil. We were in Brazil for 4 weeks, and it was 30 with humidity, just consistently hot. And we brought bikes with us and left them there. We had these cheap folding bikes that we found on Marketplace and took with us because there was no way that I was going to not bike for 4 weeks. And I didn't want to worry about renting bikes or, purchasing them there. So we took them. And I said to Ian, I don't know if I'm a winter cyclist anymore. I'm terrified. I have been warm this whole time. And then the first day I get back and I have to get to work, it was -20.
And what was it in Brazil
Celsius?
When you were there?
30. Plus 30.
So it's like a 50-degree
difference, right? And I said to him, I don't think I can do this. I think I lost it. I'm going to leave, but I might turn around and come back. And I left and I made it all the way to work. And here's the funny thing. I took the long way. Remember how I said to you that I had to adjust the way that I go to work because there is the long, beautiful way or the short way? Well, I took the long way at -20. I am a 51-year-old Brazilian woman who's only been doing this for 2 years. This is my third winter. What exactly kind of excuse does everyone else have? Because I'd like to know. You know, I think we need to get over this thing of winter cycling is impossible, riding bikes in winter is impossible, and start thinking about what our cities are doing to make it possible for us, because that is the ultimate thing. No one's a wuss. No one hates winter that much, because here we are, right? -20, -25, we still live here. We still have to go outside, right? But what are our cities doing to make it viable? Because it's not viable to have everyone drive all the time. It's not viable to expect people to take longer to get downtown by bus than any other way, right? So infrastructure is the reason that people are not riding their bikes year round, not temperature.
It actually reminds me of an even colder place. So over in Siberia, I think 2 weeks ago, Natalia was showing me this video. We were going to watch something else, and I was riveted instead. I'm like, no, let's continue watching this. It's a YouTube channel, and this woman lives in Siberia, and she's like, here's a day in the life of my Siberia in the winter. And it was genuinely so interesting. From the double insulated doors and complexes. And the funny thing is, they live in a city that is 400,000 people, which is approximately just a little bit under the population of London, Ontario. But it has more density out of necessity because it gets so cold. And when I say cold, it is like -45, -50. I think at one point, I don't know. It's the coldest place in the world. So she kept on saying this throughout the video, and then they got to it at the end. But she doesn't own a car, and she chooses public transit. This is less to do with biking, because I don't think she bikes in the winter, because it's a little bit too cold. I think the chain might freeze. There's probably ways.
Yeah,
but
there's something.
So she layers up, as per usual. I think anyone in Canada probably knows about layering up. But layering up a bit more in -45. And all it is you have about like 10 to 15 minutes outside until you may want to go inside and warm up somewhere. So they have shelters here and there, and heated bus stops, etc. But she takes public transit, and owning a car is pretty much silly because you have to have like a car blanket. The car has to turn itself on routinely so it doesn't freeze up entirely. So you have these cars and blankets everywhere. And so, or you have a garage, I guess, and then that thing has to be heated to all heck. But the reason I bring that up is you mentioned infrastructure. If you have those shuttles, if you have those buses, if you have the will and you're not relying on just vehicles, like personal motor vehicles, and catering to them, then people will consider other options, because there are other options. And I've stopped using the word, or at least try not to use the word, alternatives to vehicles, or like cars and trucks, because they really are just other options. They're not alternatives. You got rid of your car, and now you have one, but your chosen option is to bike, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
My little rant there.
Well, there are other places in the world too, and the truth is, we used to get -50 here too. And I remember 5 winters ago, we got -50 for 6 weeks straight before this whole, it feels like climate change was like something that somebody turned on up here. We heard about it in the world, but we never felt it here until 5 years ago. I think that was our last very, very cold winter. And people still did not choose the car every time, right? They did. There was still people riding bikes here. Not me, because, that was the before days, as they say. But providing the options has to be the default. That's the thing we have to switch to.
Because even in that, you said there's 6 weeks of negative 50. Even if that were to come back, that's still only 6 weeks of the year. Like if you're in negative 25, that's very bikeable, depending on distances and travel time. But
in fact, I prefer it to -10, to be quite honest with you, because it is easier for me to predict what I need to wear. It's easier for me to predict the conditions of the trails. I know it's going to be frozen. There's not going to be some slushy paths, right? We talk about this all the time. -20 is actually the magical number for riding a bike in winter, even for an hour. And my commute is an hour now because I've been taking the scenic route. So yeah.
No, I'm chuckling
ways.
because when people hear that, they're like, "Oh my goodness!" So if you were to go quick or on the quick route, what would it be? So you're taking the 1 hour route.
It still would be okay. So if all conditions were perfect, the trail was perfectly plowed, and there was no snow drifts or iffy wind, I would say 47 minutes is the fastest that I could do, because I don't use my e-bike for speed. I need to say that right up front. A lot of people say, you're on an e-bike, it should be faster, or e-bikes are passing me too fast. In the winter, I kind of try to keep my speed around 22 to 25 max, absolute max, because I need to be in control. I don't know what the surface is. There could be a patch of ice, and I have fallen and hurt my leg pretty good in the ice. So I don't want to do that again. I'm not in a hurry. I'm on my bike. Why would I be in a hurry to get off my bike? It's not a car where I need to park and get out of it. It's a bike. I'm having fun.
That right there is why I chuckled earlier, because now that we know, so like 47 to 60-ish minutes is your time frame, and people might be like, "Oh my goodness, how could you do that?" Well, there's the joke online, I don't know if you've seen it, where it's like, I would rather, it's not really a joke, it's just people on bikes saying
Statement.
this, and I agree. Yeah, statement. I would rather bike for an hour than sit in traffic for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or something in a car, because it's like, you're at least moving. You're getting your exercise in. You're actually, you would say, like, saving time, because now you don't have to go to the gym and do other things that, your body probably needs, like movement.
When we go to my parents' house, they live straight across the city from us. It takes an hour and 5 minutes to ride our bikes there. Okay. In the summer, on a good day, right? So an hour and 5 minutes is our hitting top speeds, taking the road, the fast way there, an hour and 5 minutes. And by car, it takes about 25 to 30 minutes if all goes well. But so less than half the time in a car, yet we choose the bike every time because the car feels so long. It feels so long. And you hear stories like this all the time of kids who say to their parents, I don't want to go by car, it takes too long, right?
Yeah, because, and I've heard this, and I think I discussed this on one of the previous episodes with a family who bikes. And one, they get car sick. So the biking is already a better option. But two, yeah, you're just, as a kid, you're in the back seat really bored. Like, at a certain point, you can't see out the window very much. You can kind of see the tops of houses, tops of buildings, some trees, but you're not really getting an experience, even with the window open, in warmer months. But on a bike, very, very exploratory, and your stimulus is just going all in, like your nose, your eyes, your hearing, you're just experiencing nature. So, and for kids, that can't be a bad thing.
No, absolutely not.
So we might be a little bit into this podcast. I did want to go back to the questions. This was just like
this is just the intro.
Naturally free flowing. This was just super interesting to hear. We're going to get away from the winter maybe a little bit, because you went to Brazil, and you did a little bit of a chat with another bike mayor, yes?
Yes, I did. Her name is Chisa Valverde, and she is the bicycle mayor of my hometown in Curitiba. And she interviewed me for her podcast or her radio show. And then I interviewed her, but her interview with me was sort of straightforward. So we posted that on my YouTube channel, but I haven't had a chance to really post a ride along yet. There's some editing to be done yet, but I also met with two activists from São Paulo. São Paulo is a city of 23 million people in the whole metropolitan area of São Paulo. So we got to hear the concerns of the bike community there as well.
And from what I have heard from some Brazilian friends, as much as Canada, or let's say London and Toronto, there's been a few deaths which are tragic, and they really are, because they're preventable. In Brazil, can you tell me a little bit more about the safety concerns? Because I've heard that it is less safe to bike in Brazil, depending on the city, etc.
Yeah, it really depends on the city and the area of the city. So, São Paulo, like I said, city of 23 million people, total about 11 million in the core. And they had some big protests because cyclists were getting killed there a lot. And they were able to finally get a mayor who had political will. He also knew that it was the right thing to do, and he only had he knew he wasn't going to get reelected exactly because he was going to put in the bike lanes, and he put in over 450 kilometers of bike lanes in 4 years. One of them being Paulista, Avenida Paulista. If you look into it, they had no room. It really is like tall buildings and then sidewalk, roads, and then the median. So they put the bike lane in the median, in the middle. They took out all the light poles that kind of were in the middle there and put this bike lane completely protected down the middle. So they used to have a lot of deaths along there because it is a really busy commuter route. And ever since they installed that bike lane, 0 deaths. 0
Really?
deaths.
And how long has that been?
0. 2000. Oh, shoot. I forget now. Oh, almost 10 years, 2015.
Wow.
0 deaths along Avenida Paulista. No, there's more. There's one that's even crazier, which is this one road that leads to Avenida Paulista, and the bike lane is painted with some bumps on the road, okay? Painted. And when we were there in December, we were even going uphill in the clown bikes. Okay. So like folding bikes uphill. We were passing hundreds of cars stuck in traffic. Okay. This one bike lane, 0 deaths ever since it's been installed. And it's a painted bike lane. So the effects that these bike lanes have had in the city and the rate of death. Now, as many cities, the priority for bike lanes is in the richer areas. A lot of cities in Brazil, and actually we see this sort of in Winnipeg too. The more affluent areas get most of the attention. So people who are commuting in those areas have the option of of the safe infrastructure. And this infrastructure has really helped to reduce the amount of traffic because these people who are more affluent and are living in these areas, they ride their bikes to the financial district, to the cultural district, to the parks. The parks have great infrastructure around them so that people can get to them. So the bike lanes have made a huge difference, but the death toll in the protected areas is super high. I don't know the stats because it varies a lot from city to city. Now, one interesting thing in Curitiba, my hometown, which is about, I think it's 1.3 million in the metropolitan area. And it's a city where the mayor, Jaime Lerner, in 1974 implemented the BRT system. 1974, right?
For BRT.
BRT, yeah.
Yep.
And so from the start, he had these protected bus lanes for buses only that, high tickets if you are a driver who ends up in these lanes. But they run along all of the major routes of the city. And the buses go so fast. They don't have lights. They don't have cars making left turns to deal with. Nothing. It's express all over the city.
That sounds wonderful.
It's wonderful, and it has created sort of a built-in reduction to traffic. Like Curitiba, you don't see the amount of traffic that you see in other cities. I mean, they still have a lot of issues, but not as much. And they've implemented some bike lanes in Curitiba, but mostly, again, in the nice affluent areas. And the interesting thing is the death of cyclists is 90% bus drivers. So it's kind of interesting. They have their protected. Yeah,
Wait.
hold off. How does this happen?
Okay, please elaborate. Okay, go on.
In points of friction. So it doesn't happen on the BRT line, but it happens in points of friction, like intersections. Now, if you think about it, that is a really easy problem to solve because not everyone's a bus driver. You don't have to educate the whole population. You have to educate a segment of the population that is getting paid to drive.
Yeah, professional drivers.
Professional drivers. It would be so simple to have an education session where it's like, listen, it's kind of an elevated. Tisa explained to me they kind of feel like they're something. They drive the BRT. They're the shit. Oh, excuse me. You can beat that.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So, but it would be a really easy problem to solve because instantly you'd have a little bit more respect, a little bit more caution, right? But the BRT in Curitiba hits the whole city and only buses go in it. So now you have these lanes that are express highways, and guess who loves to use them?
I'm going to go ahead and place my bets on cyclists.
Yes, because it's a completely protected. So the cyclists take these BRT lanes on the wrong side so they can see the bus coming, right? And then because there are a lot of buses, they can see it. Is there one on the other side? Can I move those over or do I have to hop on the sidewalk? Because there's still a little bit of a sidewalk on the edge. So it's really cool because the city has a built-in highway. There's signs everywhere saying no cyclists, penalty, but Brazil. So people just use it anyway. It's like telling Brazilians to drive 30 kilometers an hour. That never happens. But it to me, it was really interesting. So I thought, is that where the cyclists are getting killed? And no, that is not where the cyclists are getting killed. They're getting killed at points of conflict, intersections where, they're crossing and the buses aren't seeing them, or there's a turn. And because not every single bus is on the BRT system, of course. So there are buses that are sharing the road with, the side roads. So, but the big problem in São Paulo right now is motorcyclists. That's an issue I'm going to be talking about in some of my videos. But motorcyclists, there's 3 deaths per day.
Okay, so that's, I wasn't sure if you were going to say like the motorcyclists hitting pedestrians or cyclists.
No.
But no, it's the actual. So for a mode of transportation, especially in such a hot climate, I feel like motorcycles probably very prevalent. Similar to, let's say, Thailand. I feel like when we went there for vacation, everyone's on a motorcycle. It's cheap. It's fairly efficient. It is very noisy, unfortunately. But also, very dangerous. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. One of the things that Rogério, one of the activists that met with us, he runs a bicycle newspaper called Jornal da Bicicleta. And that's what he does. He runs this not-for-profit newspaper about bikes. He says that there is and this is the term he used, Vietnamization of transportation. So because in Vietnam, there is a high use of motorcycles to get around, this is happening in Brazil, especially because of traffic. So the motorcycles are weaving in and out, and a lot of food delivery happens by motorcycle. And he says it's like a video game that is killing motorcycles, because there is this rush. They have to deliver within a certain time if they want to get the bonus pay, right? So they're putting their lives in danger to get your food out to you super fast because they're in such a hurry. And there's 3 cyclists dying every day in São Paulo. And it's highly due to the rush that is implied. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then it raises the bar as well. So if a service, it only incentivizes these, usually they're apps. It's not going to be Uber, but let's call it Uber for now. Uber says, hey, Lyft doesn't do it.
It's called iFood. In Brazil, it's called iFood.
So there's iFood. And then if it says, hey, here's your bonus for this time, almost undoubtedly, I wonder if they're pinching, basically. They are reducing the amount of time. They're like, hey, theoretically, other riders of motorcycles, other deliverers, other delivery people are doing this in 15 minutes, let's say. So you better do it in 15 minutes or you're not going to get your bonus. And so it's like, okay. And then that time might even go down because people are racing so much to get that it just, now the expectation is even lower. So you're going to go even faster and drive more dangerously. And then the expectation's there because otherwise you don't get the bonus. That's almost inevitably capitalism style.
Or, this whole you can do more if you do it faster. Yeah. Right? If you do it faster, you're going to be rated higher, and then we're going to push the deliveries to you. Right? So.
Exactly. Yeah. The ratings are there. You might get pinged, or not pinged. You might get a slap on the wrist, you might say, if you don't deliver. Even if it's nothing to do with bonus, it's like, hey, you just won't get deliveries because you're not as good as the other drivers. When you're saying good is fast. Everything else excluded.
If we're on the topic of these food delivery apps, another thing we discovered by interviewing someone on the slide there, that was one of the the bike share in São Paulo, Itaú Bike Itaú, is connected to iFood. So bike share iFood delivery drivers get a special rate for using the bike share in São Paulo, right? So now they're using the bike share. All of a sudden, the app changed so that if you are a food delivery person and you're using the bike share, your deliveries will be closer. So there's your incentive. You don't have to go so far. Oh, you want to use your own bike and save money? Sorry, now your deliveries are across the city.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. You had me there. I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And then you pulled the rug from under me. You're like, oh, yeah. But actually, I'm like, oh, crap. Okay. Well,
yeah, it's really depressing to see how all of these apps are kind of turning things around on the users. Like when Uber started, the drivers were getting paid a certain amount, and now they're getting paid half of that because, well, now you're stuck.
Yeah, it was never sustainable from the beginning, except for with venture capital VC money. And now it's like, okay, now we have to turn a profit now that we've wrecked the taxi industry, et cetera, or in this case, the food industry. Everyone expects they raise that bar, and now they can do what they will. Now you're stuck.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry, that went off topic.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's all related. That's the interesting thing. So, yeah. No, it's all very relevant. Okay, hold up. I'm going to go over to my list now. We covered some winter stuff. We covered, I guess, the Bike Mayor stuff, the Bicycle Mayor of Winnipeg. We didn't dive deep into that.
Well, we don't. I'll give you a short version of it. So Bicycle Mayor is a title given by bikes.org, bycs.org, and it's an organization based in Amsterdam, but it's a global network. And what it does is it connects you to bicycle mayors from all over the world, 200 of us, for resources, collaboration, and that's basically all it is. But you have to apply. You have to send an application form, and you have to send 3 letters of recommendation from community leaders saying that you are the right choice. So it's basically I call it a superpower or a cape that I wear, and I get to walk around and say, hey, I am the Bicycle Mayor of Winnipeg. I'd really like to speak to you. Here in the media, they say affectionately known as the bike. No, it's not affectionate. I'm an affectionate person, but no, it's a real title. I had to earn it. I had to apply for it. And so it's kind of a matter of always educating the media that it's a real title. It is an inn. So when I was going to Curitiba, my hometown, this time, I looked up at the network and I saw there was someone there who's the bicycle mayor. I emailed her, or I WhatsApped her, because it's the universal communication system. And she said, yes, I'd love to meet. And I want to interview you for my podcast. Now, she didn't know who I was, but because I was the bicycle mayor, right, it gave me that in. So to me, it's invaluable in that sense, that it gives me this in of having a conversation with someone, and it piqued your interest too, right? Oh, the bicycle mayor, what is this?
Exactly. And I've heard about it. I've even thought of maybe doing that for London. And I'm like, I have so many responsibilities right now that maybe not just yet, but maybe at some point.
It might not change things as much as you think, and it might actually be a great thing. There is someone close to you in Waterloo.
Yes.
He's my mentor, and he's a great guy. So, I'd recommend it. It would give you an extra thing, and it might not change a whole lot.
Okay, because yeah, like it is that network. When I heard that, you kind of already know what to expect. Not entirely, but like I knew that you were going to know the things that you're supposed to know pretty much on the advocacy side of things. So it's like, okay, when I talk to you, this is the first time that we are talking right on this podcast. And this is going exactly how I expected. Like we know the stuff that we're supposed to know.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can talk the talk. And you walk the walk. Actually, you bike the bike. Up next, we're probably in like the last half hour, we'll say. I won't even say 15 minutes. I'll say half an hour. Because you also mentioned so we talked about Brazil, the struggles of living in a society that politicized transportation, but not in a good way. Did you want to elaborate on that? Because I could elaborate, but let's go with you.
Yeah, so I feel like, say, when I go visit my brother, he lives in Amsterdam, I get on my bike and I go places, and I am safe the whole time. And I get there faster by bike, and maybe I take the train, maybe I take the tram. I don't know. I decide on the spot, and it's not a big deal, right? Whereas here, I don't know when this started, but the minute I get on my bike, I am something else, right? Why are you, why do you grow up? Get a car, get off the road. Why are you in my way? When did this start? Why is it such a political thing? Whenever we have to advocate for slower speeds on a street or for more bike lanes, it becomes this fight that's between the right and the left. One of the things that I noticed is that in Brazil, it's exactly the same thing, right? It had to be a left-leaning mayor who got all those kilometers put in for protected bike infrastructure. And the minute that another mayor was elected who was more right-leaning, it was like, no, these bike lanes are the communist bike lanes. Why? Like, we're just trying to go somewhere the same way you are, but using a different mode of transportation. I'm not in your way if I'm in a protected bike lane. I'm in your way if we have to share the road and you have to wait for me. And I'm going to take that lane because I have a right to be here just as much as you. We had a cyclist get killed here last year. And we made a lot of waves. We decided at Bike Winnipeg, I'm also on the board of directors of Bike Winnipeg, and I write the newsletter. My partner and I are really involved in Bike Winnipeg as well. And We sent out a lot of media releases. We organized a ghost bike ride. We really brought it forward. And now we're being accused of using someone's death for our political gains. And I'm like, what political gains? Arriving alive? That's my political gain, is to arrive alive, right? And I had someone email me, this old man, said, if you want safety, you're going to have to pay for it. I didn't reply to him because I don't have time for that BS. But he sent me an email, and then he sent it to me again a week later because I didn't have reply. And it's like, I pay for it. It's called property taxes. That's how I pay for it.
And disproportionately, actually, the drivers don't pay.
Exactly. Let's not even get into the weeds of it. But if we were to say who pays for what, we all pay for it. And yet sometimes I'm also paying with my life. So let's stop politicizing that and make it policy. Let's politicize it the right way, right? To make it policy, make it law so that governments change and we don't lose what we have. I mean, Ontario, let's not even go there, right? This whole bill 212, that is absolutely politicizing it the wrong way. Instead of making it law to protect you, it's making law so that you can't sue if you are killed.
Yeah, that addition is absolutely bonkers. For people who don't know, go look up 212 and what other search terms. You'd be like, can't sue government if hurt or killed. Pretty much that will get you the
Doug Ford.
The RDR. Yeah, Doug Ford is. Here's
devil.
the thing. It's just like suddenly it is politicized because he's, we'll call it being silly, to say the least, but to the nth degree. Like, just like,
yeah.
Oh, anyways, so there's that. And I think as an advocate, as advocates, we have to kind of convey that it helps everyone. Like, you choosing to bike doesn't stop other people from driving. You choosing to drive makes more traffic. There's no way where you are suddenly, it doesn't help out drivers. This is helping drivers.
The problem is that when was it the last time that you were able to explain things in a way that made sense and people change their minds? The people who are really, really stuck in the ways of thinking that it's us versus them. You know, people say to me all the time, you can't make it us versus them. I say, I didn't make it of it. They did, right? And now we're in this fight. And if you look at the world today, we're burning. The world is burning. Some crazy lunatic was elected to, to lead the free world. And people are making conspiracy theories about the craziest things. Are we going to be able to convey, or will we have to really rise up, organize, show up, and stop trying to have educated conversations? You know, there's this movement of like, do the things that you can in your community. Let's be friendly, and this talk because Strong Towns is all about this. It's all about, do the little things that you can. Enough with the little things. Excuse me as I get excited, but it's time to rise up. It's time for women to rise up. It's time for anyone with mobility issues to rise up. And it's time for the men to start backing us up, because a world without everyone else is useless. Mm-hmm. We need to unite in the fight and really show up at City Hall and show them that we vote, that we need a change, that we can make a difference, or else. Are we going to take to the streets and say, stop murdering our children? Because that's what had to happen in Amsterdam for things to change in the 70s. And if that's what we have to do, I'm willing to do it. And I'm going to get my friends to show up. I have a lot of friends. So
you
watch
mentioned
out.
Discord in another podcast, and that's a whole other thing. But on that, so on the women's side of things, this podcast, I don't know if I've ever said it on the podcast, but my demographic target are 20 to 35-year-old women, potentially with a family. And The reason it's that is because of the indicator species side of things. Are you aware of it? I'm pretty sure you are. And did you want to elaborate why it's so important to see women and children using infrastructure? And I'm not getting away from the politicization, but I'm maybe trying to augment the argument here is that it's not left or right. It's being able to get around and
it's wrong or right.
Pardon, sorry?
It's not left or right. It's wrong or right.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one, actually.
I just made that up.
It's left or right. Nope, it's wrong or right. And yeah, there's a right way of doing things. We, in the last 50 years, 100 years, and by we, I mean just the freaking automotive industry, has lobbied to all heck to make sure that it is convenient and also the only option to get around. So really, everyone's being forced to drive because, quote, the most convenient way, where we already covered this at the top. It's all about infrastructure. We've built it so you have to drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 5 hours, you said?
Yeah, we have 5 hours. So in the next 4 hours, we're going to talk about, no. We're probably done in the next 20 minutes or so. But
so
women on bikes.
Right. So one of the recommendations that I've made to you via our conversations and that I will make here again, and I make it every time that I can, is the book Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. She also has an amazing Substack newsletter that I really recommend that you subscribe to, because she gives updates on, this book came out to explain the lack of segregation of data in this segregated world, right? And she provides updates because it was such a huge stir when she published this book that governments changed the way that they do things to accommodate for the fact that women are being left sort of behind in urban planning and transportation and medical studies, lots of things. So one of the ways in which women move is that women don't move in a linear way. So, and when I say women, please excuse me, I mean non-cisgendered males, right? So anyone outside of that little pocket, right, moves in a different way, but especially women. Women take on the more caretaking roles. Even if you tell me that society's changed, it's BS. Society has not changed that much. Women are still sort of taking care of their parents, their kids, grandparents. They're doing the grocery run. They're going to the mall to get the kids some clothes for school. They're going to get the books. It still falls largely on women to do these errands. And the way transportation is created is a linear fashion. Here we need to get to downtown, right? How to get to downtown for work, or how to get to the big business centers for men to get there with their cars. And then when we're doing the cycling planning, it kind of follows that same pattern, and it's missing that last little bit. Think about it. Whenever you want to go somewhere and you need, say you need to get groceries, right? You may have protected infrastructure to a certain point, and then the last 500 meters or kilometer, you're on your own because nobody planned for that. So the way that transportation works isn't conducive to caregiving, to this secondary stops that we need to make that isn't something that is in the commute route, right? So one of the things that Sweden did, and it's a case study in the book, she talks about it on the 99% Invisible podcast as well, an old episode. This is how I even found out about this book, is that once Sweden switched the priority for snow clearing from cars to active transportation routes, whether bikes or sidewalks, the GDP went up. Because cars can still get places. Cars are getting bigger all the time, and they rarely really get stuck in the snow anymore. And because other cars have come before, chances are the road is doable, unless it's a major snowfall, right? Whereas like bikes, it's a bit more struggle. So if we prioritize everything but drivers, we may be able to get people to switch from driving. We may be able to have women feeling safer to take their kids to school by bike, to then go get the groceries and then go to their jobs or whatever, men mostly commute in a straight line, whereas women make a bunch of zigzags. And I'm really generalizing things here, and apologize if I offend anyone for the terms that I'm using, but it's sort of still the reality in many places of the world.
And so with you apologizing, it's interesting because you're bringing up you're saying, hey, on average, that's good because we use averages. That's fine. So you're saying on average, it's less linear. That's totally fine. Because the other side of things is, I just want to bring it back to drivers real quick, because with drivers, they always have the whataboutisms. Like they say, hey, for my situation, are you crazy? I can't bike 75 kilometers a day for my commute. So they have these not average commutes, and they have, well, I can't do it. Therefore, everything you're talking about, I'm negating. It's like, whoa. No. Like, it's very interesting because you're saying, hey, it's about the average. We should make sure that
what I always say to that is like, okay, so you can't, but wouldn't it be great if everyone else who would, right?
Exactly.
So exactly, and I say exactly because you can't, everyone else who can should, right? Yep. That's fine. Wouldn't you love it if your commute had like 10 less cars in your way?
Exactly.
Right?
It only benefits them, because let's say if they have to hit a highway or go on the country roads, that's fine in between. Like, you might not hit traffic, but as soon as you're either leaving from where you live and your neighbors all drive too, but some could bike and are not biking because of the lack of infrastructure, etc. And when you get to the other area as well, usually another city, let's say, and there's a bunch of traffic there too. Well, guess what? The people who live in the places that you either left from and are going to, if those people weren't forced to drive, then suddenly you have less traffic. That's how that works. And I just wanted to say about the privilege quote, and I heard this. I have it up here. Doesn't say who it's from. I'm sorry, but when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And so that's what drivers are experiencing at this point. I mentioned like the last 50 to 100 years, everything's designed for drivers. And now it's being not even taken away, but just, hey, you have 100% or 99% of the infrastructure devoted to you, whether it's parking lots, roads, this, that, everything, including sprawl, that's driver-centric as well. And suddenly it's like, hey, can we have a little bit back? And it's like, you're oppressing me.
Yeah. So. That's exactly it. That's absolutely it.
Side thing. Yesterday, we started listening to the audiobook version of Invisible
Women.
Yes, I'm just totally looking up the thing. Yeah, so it's on my phone. We started listening to the first 15 minutes, and now for the rest of the week, we're probably going to do our listening sessions. Yeah.
Great. Get ready for the rage.
Yeah.
Ironically, I listened to this on my way to work when I used to drive to work. I think it was 2018. And by the time I got to work, I was worked up in a rage. But you can't get away from it. It's more than 50% of the population. We need to start paying attention. And, for us women, we need to realize that there are more of us. Let's get together and let's overthrow the system. I don't want to use the Taylor Swift quote right here because the patriarchy, that one.
I'll just censor it. It's all right. You know what she said. Yeah. But yeah, and I am there. Like I said this on our chat together. I want to have more women on this podcast, and I want more women biking because it's empowering even for me, because it's like, hey, I'm just another like bearded white guy. I'm not middle-aged yet, so yay, there's that. And I don't wear Lycra, so I'm not a mammal, the middle-aged men in Lycra. But yeah. You mentioned the upright Dutch e-bike, like Dutch-style e-bike. That's what I call ours too. I like it kind of says something when you're riding it. One, it also feels great, and I don't like being slouched over. I never did the mountain bikes from Canadian Tire, which my childhood was full of. Oh my goodness. They're so bad.
Yeah.
Just posture-wise. You
Hard on
can
your
if you
wrist too. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I did go back. I had an e-bike that I was testing out, and it was fairly aggressive, and my wrists hurt so fast. And I didn't realize how much stress being over in a more of aggressive stance caused your wrists to like take a pounding. Like going back to that, I can't at this point. I am not able
No.
to.
Also, your field of vision. Like I find that especially in winter, when you are more upright, you can see things better. You have a better advantage point, right? You're higher than some of these cars. So,
Sure. Did you have anything? I have a few more comments, and it's to do with
Sure.
e-bikes and women and how they can help. So, okay, I'll go into that right now. But
okay.
But do you find, like you mentioned, the headwind? Headwind is like the reason that e-bikes are amazing because you can plan for hills. You know that a hill is there. It's not like gonna move on you.
You have gears for that. Yeah.
Exactly. You can prepare for it. You know it's there. It will always be there, whether it's down or up or flat. You can prepare. Headwind, on the other hand, will throw you off because it's like it bludgeons you. You're saying 50-kilometer-hour winds, and you're on a bike, and because it's an upright position, you're kind of like more of a sail. So,
Yeah.
So instead, you're like, no, I say no to this wind. Cancel. Nope. You can nope out of the situation and get to work and get to your destination on time and not being a puddle. Would you?
Yes. Yeah.
Would you
So,
agree?
absolutely. And I too say no to wind because I noticed that with climate change, I hate to say that so many times in an interview, but climate change really has changed the wind. I find that the wind is just relentless now. We don't have non-windy days anymore, and they're usually coming at me from all sides. But on my commute, I go east-west, and the wind largely comes from the northeast or northwest. So I'm getting them either on the way to or the way back. And not having to worry about that really takes the gas away, right? The guesswork away. Another thing that the e-bike does is it flattens your commute. It's always the same. It's always the same, no matter what, unless it's, you're comparing winter and summer. But drivers, oh, there was construction. I'm always at work before everyone else because of either construction or snow, right? The drivers are like, oh, the traffic was so bad because it was the first snowfall. I'm like, sorry, don't have anything to say. My traffic commute was exactly the same because the e-bike, I'm able to push a little harder, right? Otherwise, where I otherwise wouldn't.
That sidewalk thing, I'll bring it right back to the beginning and then we'll start wrapping up here. But as much as the snort on that sidewalk for my grocery run was annoying, I looked to the side and there was construction and the cars were piled up on my left. And it was like it's the reconstruction of that road that I was talking about. There's no cycling infrastructure going in, unfortunately, on that road. So during the winter, it's still going to be really annoying. But the start was annoying and there was a little bit of slippage here and there, but overall, it actually took me less time to get to the store and get back than if I were to go outside, dust off the car, turn it on, warm it up, and again, it's just sitting there idling, which is not great. I try not to do that too much, but after the dead battery incident, now I do that for about a minute or so, and then I start going. But either way, like there's all of that going on. And then this is something that maybe I should make a whole video on. It is bad for your car to, especially in your conditions where it's negative 25 and below, it is bad for your car to start up, go for like 5 or 10 minutes, turn off, and sit there because your oil and the moisture inside in the engine actually hasn't warmed up enough for it to circulate properly and for the moisture to dissipate due to the heat. So yes, I know there's the engine block warmers and everything and the heaters. So that is really good. For
if you tell drivers that it's bad for their car, maybe we should add that it's bad for their car to pass cyclists really close to. Maybe they'll listen.
Yes, clearly they don't know about that either because it's their one tool for all the jobs. But
yeah.
Oh my goodness, the passing close side of things is why
That's not. It's not.
It's why you end up on the sidewalk when there's not infrastructure, and then
Yeah.
people say, "Oh yeah."
Yeah,
Anyways,
you need
quick
to
hole
just
there.
take the lane, and that's the thing I'm learning. It's my lane too, you know. But if we're circling back to things, I wanted to also say to you that I did notice when I was watching your videos that you are interviewing a lot of women, and I think that's really great. It's important, and I want to commend you for that. And I also want to encourage you to let them talk the way you did today with me. Listen to them, and make notes of the issues that they are running into, because they are different. We are not the same. We don't run into the same issues. And even women all over the world run into different issues where they are. When we were in São Paulo, we never saw women cycling, like rarely saw women cycling. When we got to Curitiba, we saw so many more. And I wanted to know why that was. There was a lot more women cycling. And a city that where you see women cycling indicates the health of a city, because it means they feel safe, right? And by you providing a safe space for women to air out their issues, you're kind of, stopping the leak from the second floor, right? You have access. You have access to the tap. We don't always have access to the tap. So as a white bearded man, right, you have this space and you have access to that. I want to do the same with my channel, to really provide a voice for women from a woman's point of view. And if we're all sort of working together to tackle this issue, maybe we'll get people to rise up. I would love to invite you to participate in the global Discord that I'm starting as well, right? Because it is just starting out, but I think that if we unite our voices, we're going to learn some tips and tricks on how to organize in person, online, and how to put pressure on our governments to listen or to replace our governments. If they don't listen, no, we need to either get them to listen or we need to replace them, and we need to organize in order to do that.
So on that, actually, this is why the podcasts never end and they run so long, because like one thing leads to another. But no, okay. So with what you just said, a lot of elections happened in the last year, the last little bit. And a lot of that has been a lot of right swinging. And I think over the next 4 years, it is so important to do exactly what you're talking about. Get people, everyone, but especially like focusing on women, in this case, to understand that this is not a like partisan issue with active transportation. And if a lot of people are complaining about the cost of living crisis and housing crisis and all of these things and inequality, and there's inequality when you are forced to drive and you are disproportionately, again, the invisible women side of things, you are disproportionately more likely to have a fatal or critical incident in a vehicle. Was it 47% more likely to die in a car collision? Because all of the other reasons.
Cars aren't built for women, but okay.
There we go. And so this is where I've only listened to the first 15 minutes.
Yeah,
so
I can tell.
I'm like, please fill it in. Yeah. So with all of that, it's time to, over the next 4 years, educate the public and
get out of our bubble. We need to get out of a bubble. We have this idea. I mean, I think it was very clear with what happened in the United States. We were living in this bubble when we thought we were winning. We thought that reason was going to win. I'm not American, never will be, but when I say we, is like reason. We thought reason was going to win because we surrounded ourselves in this social bubble that gave us the illusion that was happening, right? So we need to get out of our bubbles. We need to get out of our computers. We need to get out on the street and start talking to people and make real change. And listen to what it is that's hanging them up.
I'm not going to dive into this, but because we have already
we have to do this again.
Exactly. We'll just have to talk more. What you mentioned about going to another city in Brazil, and it went from no women cycling, and you're like, wow, there's so many cyclists, but they're all guys. And then you went to another city that had safer infrastructure, and boom, done. You had more diversity in the ridership, we'll call it.
Yes.
And that just shows that if you have half the population, or as you're saying, over half the population of the world not taking advantage of these other options, then we need to fix things. So that.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
I think that was a lot. But yes, it kind of jumped all over the place as per usual. Next time, maybe I'm 16 into these. Wait, 18 into these podcasts, and I know it jumps all over the place. That's just how conversation works. Maybe I'll give up on trying to keep it on track. Maybe. Or maybe I'll keep on trying and it'll...
Well, like I said, you're listening, right? And the issues come up, and it's important to listen to what the issues are, not what the agenda is. So you did great.
Excellent. All right. Well, do you have any other closing kind of thoughts, or you have had so many great thoughts today, and this was an amazing, I was going to say an amazing awesome. So and I'm awesome.
And I'm awesome. I love awesome. And I'm awesome. So
conversation.
One thing that as we're advocating, okay, when we talk to politicians, we need to stop the narrative of our mayor, Scott Gillingham, loves to say, well, drivers need to start paying attention. Make them pay attention, punish them for not paying attention, and reduce the amount of access they have to infrastructure. Give us more. That's how you make them pay attention. Stop putting the onus on the drivers and make it policy, make it law, and enforce it. That's my closing thoughts.
I approve. Yeah, you can...
Yeah. Right.
Okay, I have to not. I very much agree with that. I will shut it off because this is going to be another 10 minutes at least.
Okay, you can do it with your next one.
Exactly. We'll just have to talk again. There we go.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. It was great chatting with you. I've been a big fan, and I'm glad to be on here. So
awesome. Well, right before we leave, where can people find you on the interwebs? And you mentioned YouTube too, so.
So if you go to pattybikes.com, PATTYBIKES.com, you will find all the links. My YouTube channel is on there, Instagram, the global Discord is on there in the links section as well. So and my YouTube is youtube.com/@PattyRollingFree. So you can find me on there. There will be a lot of content from Brazil coming up this year, but I try to help people also find safe routes around our city. So yeah, there's lots of riding videos on there.
I'm going to go check out the Discord. That's sounding pretty cool. I know that, oh my goodness, another topic. Okay, you have a local one in Winnipeg. I was listening to another podcast. All is good. Now you have the global one. I'm going to go check out your website. That's that. That's
Awesome.
what I'm doing after this. So
Sounds great. Thank you so much
right.
for having me on, Ben.
Thanks. Have a great one. Bye.
You too. Bye.